What's going on YouTube? My name is Nick Cheadle and today I'm going to take you guys through how to fix what I think is the most common issue when it comes to setting up for the deadlift. When it comes to the deadlift, we want to make sure that our movement pattern is as efficient as possible. We want to keep the bar nice and close to us so we don't overextend the use of our lower back and put too much pressure through that area, and actually give ourselves a chance to use our glutes and our hamstrings as well as our lower back in order to get that weight up as efficiently and as effortlessly as possible. I tend to see most people walk up to the bar, assume the position with their shins relatively close to the bar. Then from there, they squat down to grab it and assume their starting position. The only problem with this is by squatting down, what ends up happening is more often than not, we end up pushing the bar further forward whilst we get into position. So whilst it feels like the bar is super close, so that we can pull it more efficiently, it's actually much further out in front of us than we realize. So not only is the bar now further forward or further in front of you than you realize, it's actually gonna pull your center of gravity further forward as well. So if we see a side-on angle of this, we're actually gonna see that our shoulder is now ahead of the bar and ahead of where our hands are holding onto the bar, which means that as soon as we start to pull, our whole weight is gonna shift forward and gravity is gonna do its thing and put more pressure than we want straight through our lower back. So as you can see, even though I'm in position and the bar is pressing against my shins, at the moment my starting position has my shoulders in front of the bar, which means as soon as I try and pull, my weight is going to shift forward and the bar is even going to pull me further forward in that direction. And the only muscle that can really help pull us back from that position is our lower back. Again, meaning we're going to overuse that or use it more than we need to. It's also going to make it very difficult to engage our glutes and our hamstrings as a consequence. So the ideal scenario for the starting position of the deadlift is to have your shoulders directly over the bar, so that as you hinge through the hips, your shoulders stay directly on top of the bar from a side-on angle and give you every opportunity to keep that bar as close as possible whilst hip hinging. So the easiest way to fix this, straight from the bat, is to set up from the bar, give yourself roughly an inch between the bar and your shins, and instead of squatting down to pick the bar up, I'm gonna get you to fold at the hips to make sure that your shins remain relatively upright. Grab the bar from there, and then instead of squatting into position, I'm going to get you to fold yourself into position behind the bar. Our shins are going to be still super close, but now our center of gravity is going to shift more behind the bar, allowing us more easily to hip hinge, but also give us an opportunity to keep the bar as close as possible. So really important when you're trying to get your weight behind the bar to ensure that your shoulders don't travel over the bar and keep it super close to you throughout the duration of the movement, that you don't alter the position of your hips relative to your shoulders. A lot of people in trying to get behind the bar tend to turn into a really upright deadlifting position, almost mirroring that of a squat. So instead of being in this position here, they end up being in this position here, which, as you can probably see from the way that my body is built, it's not going to be super efficient in terms of moving a lot of weight very efficiently. So in getting into that position, think about maintaining the relative position of your hips to your shoulders and simply shifting them back behind the bar rather than changing the shape of the alignment of those two areas. So folding out the hips, grabbing the bar, and then sitting behind the bar. And as I move into that position, because I've left myself just about an inch between my shins and the bar and whilst my shins are in an upright position, as I fold behind the bar, my shins end up touching the bar, keeping it super close as I deadlift. When it comes to resetting, just make sure that you leave the same amount of distance between your upright shin and the bar each rep, and you'll be in exactly the same position every time you make a lift. So here we have a comparison between a not so optimal position and a more optimal position. On the left, we have our shoulders, which are clearly tracking over the bar, more than likely leading to our weight being firmly through our toes, and a much angrier position for our lower back to be in, simply due to the stress that we're about to put it under by being in such a position before we pick up the bar. Whereas on the right, we have our shoulders more in line with the bar without dropping our hips too low, so that we're in a more optimal position to pull the bar off the floor and engage our glutes and hamstrings. Get yourself into the gym and film your own deadlift from side on. If you currently look like the photo on the left, focus on shifting your hips and your shoulders back behind the bar without changing their relative position. So rather than dropping your hips and raising your shoulders as per the left-hand side on this photo, we need to think about shifting to the left of screen, maintaining the relative position of your hips to your shoulders and putting yourself in a far more optimal position, rather than assuming a squat-like stance where you're effectively pushing the ground away from the bar. Okay, so last image, just a quick comparison of the three different positions that I see most people deadlifting in. On the left-hand side, we see a super upright deadlifting position. It almost looks like a squat. In fact, if you filmed your squat and then compared it to that deadlift, chances are it probably looks almost identical. But as you can see, pushing the ground away from the bar, not exactly a great position to be in, and definitely not a strong one. Whereas the photo in the middle, we're clearly out over the top of the bar. Our weight can only ever be through our toes, and our lower back is going to get a serious pounding as a consequence. To add to that, if you think about the bar being pulled upwards in that position, you can quite clearly see, because your shoulders are out over the bar, naturally gravity is going to allow that bar to swing forward, pushing you even further forward and putting more pressure on your lower back. Finally, the photo on the right, the optimal or the more optimal deadlifting position, where our hips are still relatively high, but our shoulders are more in line with the bar, enabling us to better engage the glutes and the hamstrings and actually focus on hip hinging and being in a stronger position. A huge thank you to Andrew Tang from Obsidian Strength, who actually taught me that idea when I myself was struggling with understanding the mechanics of the deadlift and how I could better hip hinge and maintain that bar position in terms of the bar path being straight up and straight down from a side-on perspective. If you don't follow Andrew, make sure you do. The man is an absolute genius. Guys, for those of you that are wondering, this is one of the newest tanks from the Steve Cook Gymshark line, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Obviously, it goes without saying, when you do deadlift, you want to make sure that you're thinking about engaging your lats, creating plenty of tension through your core and your lats, as well as ideally lifting with protracted shoulders so that you can essentially pull the bar the least amount of distance from the floor as possible. But all of those things are for another day. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.